about is, my gosh, BA, can you believe how much the national media seems to like Georgia in this game on Saturday? Can you believe that there's this much unanimity around this idea? We'll talk more to Brad Nessler and David Greene about that in our program a little bit later on. But let me kind of take this kind of a different direction here, because obviously the scenario that Felica lays out as a possibility, it could happen on this program. We've tried to be clear about our case, why we think it probably does happen. Then by the time this game reaches the second half, it's probably not all that competitive. But let me take the not necessarily the opposite point of view here, but just a different twist and turn to this discussion here this week, because we know we have a picture in our mind of what it's going to look like on Saturday, right? Huge crowd, intense atmosphere, Georgia feeding off that in the early going. But for a Georgia team that on both sides of the ball is going to play some young talent, and in some cases players who maybe feed off that emotion a little bit more some than others, how do you maintain that over the course of 60 minutes? I have that on my mind today, because on this same podcast where you just heard the Bear Chris Felica lay out his case for maybe this thing getting a little sideways before it's all said and done, his partner, you may know him as Sanford Steve, he shows up on Scott Van Pelt Sports Center and things like that. He said, yeah, but the one thing you got to be careful of when you have this big of a favorite, Georgia against Notre Dame, watch out for what happens late in the game. And Steve Coughlin made his case for that on this same ESPN podcast. Listen to this.
To me, I just feel like these games, Bear, where the momentum and the emotion and everything is so high to start the game that the back door is always going to be open. Always going to be open.
What he means when he says the back door is open is that a blowout game early becomes a closer game late. And for those of you that care about the point spread, maybe within the point spread before it's all said and done. And I'm actually really glad that Sanford Steve said that on the ESPN podcast. And I'll put a link to the full show when we post our podcast, the world-famous DawgNation.com, later on today. But I'm really glad that Steve said what he said there, because I do think it sets us up for somewhere I wanted to go this week anyway. Because here is what I think is an interesting challenge for Georgia fans on Saturday. We know what it's going to be like when the team runs through the banner. We know what it's going to sound like when the Baba O'Reilly's playing, and we just know how, I mean, it gets me kind of chills even thinking about this. We know what the early atmosphere is going to be like for this game with Georgia just breathing down, Georgia fans breathing down Brian Kelly and Notre Dame's neck. We know they're going to make this a tough place to play. But I do think it's a fair question to ask. Can Georgia fans do that for the full 60 minutes? Can Georgia fans create an environment at Dooley Field at Sanford Stadium that really becomes a house of horrors for the opposition? Because what we've seen from Georgia fans the last couple of years is this fan base has become pretty renowned for its ability to travel, taking over Nashville, taking over South Bend a couple of years ago, huge showing in Pasadena for the Rose Bowl. Pretty much everywhere Georgia goes, Georgia fans show up to the tune of tens upon tens of thousands, and no one has supported their team better. However, by reputation, Sanford Stadium has not always been thought of as one of the most intense home field atmospheres in all of college football. Either fairly or unfairly, when you see the ranking of the top 5, the top 10 toughest places to play, Georgia's not always near the top of those lists. Now, on the field, Georgia's won all of its home games for the last 2 seasons, so maybe that's starting to change. But in terms of the noise and the atmosphere and what's created for the full 60 minutes, Saturday night's a chance for Georgia fans to build this aspect of their reputation. It's not only a fan base that travels and has a good time, it's also a fan base that makes things miserable on the opposition for its home games as well. In fact, this week, Kirby Smart talked about the role that fans could play in this game, the challenges of trying to make an intense atmosphere, and ultimately what the impact will be. Here's Kirby Smart.
I don't know that. I mean, I don't know how much they've prepared for that. I don't know. I know this, when you have an experienced quarterback, which they do, it's less of an impact than an inexperienced quarterback. But I do know that our crowd will have an impact. Whether it's on a lineman, whether it's on a communication of a receiver or a tight end, who knows? But they'll have an impact on the game, and we need them to, because that's the advantage of playing at home.
Kirby says they'll have an impact in the game, meaning the crowd, and we need them to. And I think that's true. And I think the Georgia fans themselves should take this as a little bit of a challenge. One of the things that everybody's waiting to see is, what does it look like when I've heard as many as 200,000 people in Athens on Saturday. I don't know if that's even true or even possible, but you've just heard so many stories. Tickets going for as high as, $700 in some cases. The get-in price here, I think, is still somewhere around $300. Is this a wine and cheese crowd? Is this a see and be seen crowd? Is this a crowd that takes a bunch of Instagram selfies and says, hey, look, I was at the big game? Or is this a crowd that comes ready to make an impact in this football game and send a message to the other top-flight teams in college football that when you come to Athens, and over the course of the next decade, a lot of them will be Oklahoma, Clemson, Texas, and others, when you come to Athens, expect this to be a very, very tough place to play. There's never been a better backdrop for Georgia football in Athens. It's prime time on CBS. It's ESPN College Game Day to get the morning started. This is about as perfect of a fall Saturday as you can get. And it's an opportunity for Georgia fans to flex a little bit, to show just how much of an intense atmosphere they can create for a full 60 minutes. And all those fears that the national media has that this game might not be so close when it's all said and done, the Georgia fans can have a say in making sure that turns out to be true. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Hello to you, and thanks for being with us. No matter how you get to us today, live on video, 10 a.m., DawgNation Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We're on the radio at noon, of course, on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Rev, and as a podcast wherever you find them, including the world-famous DawgNation.com. And while I have your attention, let me take a moment to say to you how excited I am about the big event we're hosting tonight, the Marlowe's Tavern location right there in a great neighborhood of Peachtree Corners. A lot of you have been saying, BA, when are you guys going to get out and do some new Marlowe's Tavern locations, get out to some places you haven't been before? Well, tonight, it's our first time at the Peachtree Corners location. Now, I have heard a lot of buzz about this spot. Obviously, Peachtree Corners is one of the great neighborhoods in Atlanta, in the Atlanta area, and the Marlowe's Tavern is going to be popping tonight. So write this address down, and please be with us, 5210 Town Center Boulevard. That's 52110. Let me try that again. 5210, 5210 Town Center Boulevard in Peachtree Corners. We're there tonight starting at 6 p.m. Myself, John Stinchcomb. It's a live broadcast of our Marlowe's matchup. Then after that, we'll be kind of hanging out, taking your questions and comments, and just talking some Georgia football, enjoying some chef-inspired food, some craft cocktails. A first time for us this season to be at a Marlowe's Tavern location. Cannot wait for that tonight. As I told you before, two fun guests for us coming up. We'll get Brad Nessler from CBS Sports coming up in a moment. David Greene here in just a second as well. Before that, though, let's go around the doghouse here today by our friends, brought to you by Online Trading Academy. And in addition to the action on the field for Georgia on Saturday, there is also a very significant recruiting event taking place. You know, you've been following along in the forum at forum.dawgnation.com, or you've been reading Jeff Sintel's reporting at DawgNation.com. By now, you know about Noah Sewell's trip. You know about Theo Johnson's trip, Darnell Washington's trip. By the way, there's more on Noah Sewell coming up today at DawgNation.com. You want to check that out. You know how big of a recruiting event this is going to be, but when Kirby Smart and his staff are hosting this many recruits, on the same day they're also playing as big a game as Georgia-Notre Dame looks to be. How does the staff handle all of that? How do they manage their time? Does the late start help here? Kirby Smart, when he spoke about that subject a little earlier this week, actually kind of downplayed the whole thing. Here's what Kirby Smart said about the dual role of hosting recruits, some on official visits, and playing a big game that night. Kirby on this subject.
It doesn't change for us guys. I'm going to be honest with you. I think y'all think that this is like we're going to recruit the kids that come. We're going to have a great group of prospects that come, and we're going to entertain them. We're going to do a good job spending time with them because we've got more of the day to do that. And I'm very thankful that we've got this opportunity because we've got a lot of national attention and a lot of, I guess, it's an attractive game for people to want to come to. So we're looking forward to that, but we're going to do what we do.
So Kirby kind of downplays it, as I said. My assumption, though, is that on the ground it's actually a little harder to pull off than he makes it sound because while they've got an army of analysts, and Kirby kind of talked about that some this week about how they help, make this weekend go smoothly for those who are taking their visits. There's also that portion of the time where the elite players want their FaceTime with Kirby himself or their FaceTime with other UGA coaches, and obviously there's only so much of that to go around. So I'm sure that behind the scenes, managing all that's a little more challenging than Kirby Smart makes it sound, but this is the kind of thing he thrives on and lives for, and these kinds of games themselves are the real currency right now in recruiting. This chance to host the kinds of recruits that Georgia's going to host this week, this is the kind of thing that some programs just cannot open the door for. I mean, y'all want to laugh? Go look at the list of recruits that Florida's hosting this week for the Tennessee game. Not every program can get the elite recruits on their campus. Georgia can, and my guess is they'll host them well coming up this weekend. It's Around the Doghouse. It's brought to you by my friends at Online Trading Academy. And, of course, you know that one of the best decisions you can make is the decision to invest in yourself. Everybody wants more money when you think about doing things like going to the Georgia-Notre Dame game this weekend or hosting a big tailgate or whatever it is you plan on doing this weekend. It takes money to do all those things, and the way to get more money for yourself is find out how to make the markets work to your advantage, and move in your direction. Online Trading Academy provides that both in the classroom and online, a lot of different ways to learn and a lot of cool things to learn about. A variety of trading styles, a spectrum of asset classes. Online Trading Academy is the right choice for you to invest in yourself and learn how the markets work. But you've got to reach out to them at this website, tradingacademy.com/Atlanta. Tradingacademy.com. That's with a D, tradingacademy.com/Atlanta. All right, it's great to have you with us here on DawgNation Daily today. Later on, we'll hear from Brad Nessler from CBS Sports. For now, though, on a big weekend in Athens, let's talk to our buddy, former Georgia quarterback David Greene, right here on DawgNation Daily. And it's always fun for me when we have a chance to have David Greene here on DawgNation Daily, the former Georgia quarterback. One of the cool things that David usually does when he joins on the program, he tells us about some good stuff going on at Tailgate Apparel, which is a great UGA apparel store located downtown in Athens. I'm sure David's got some more to say on that as well. But before I welcome in David, let me also show you this. Speaking of Tailgate Apparel, Chantel and the whole team over there at Tailgate were nice enough to send this Georgia T-shirt in for me. First of all, maybe a night for those of you who want to wear black on Saturday, this is a black T-shirt. Get the nice Georgia stitching on this with the dogs. One of the things I love about Tailgate Apparel is the kind of retro styling they have to a lot of the stuff they have. And you've heard me talk about Tailgate Apparel for a while. If you want to know more about this, you can check out DawgNation Daily Live on Facebook right now. I know many of you watch on YouTube or you watch on Twitter. If you want to pop over to the Facebook for a second, you'll see a pinned comment at the top. You can click into that and you can kind of shop around some more for yourself and find out about all the really cool apparel that Tailgate Apparel has to get you outfitted for UGA here this season. So please check that out. That is up in our Facebook comment section right now as we do DawgNation Daily Live. And, of course, radio and podcast audience, you can check that out much the same way. With all of that said, let me bring in David Greene here, former Georgia quarterback. David, welcome into our program. I am guessing that you are very much like all of us are, chomping at the bit to be in Athens this weekend, to see the show that's going to be put on by Georgia and Notre Dame there as well, to experience game day, the CBS primetime broadcast. I don't know that you could add anything to this element. Perfect weather, by the way, is on tap here as well. What could you do to make this one more exciting and anticipated than it is? I'm not sure there's anything left.
Yeah, Brandon, you're right. I tell you, I told somebody yesterday, I said, I wonder if this is actually bad because I feel like a 5-year-old kid, like the day before Christmas, kind of feeling. Just the excitement. I think especially to the way the teams played, to open up these first 3 games. I mean, exciting with that. Obviously, with Notre Dame coming here the first time, and you got to have college game day. People had this game circled on their calendar for a long time, and so. It's exciting. And the way we went up there a couple years ago, that was really Jake Fromm's coming out party's first, game on the road, and be able to have that victory. 2 top 10 teams right here. So you couldn't ask for more. And I'm hoping the weather's going to stay the way it is now because those first couple games are pretty hot.
David, in your career, you actually played in some pretty big non-conference games. It wasn't the sort of inter-regional stuff that we're going to see between Georgia and Notre Dame, but you played Clemson and Athens in 2002. Y'all traveled to Clemson in 2003 and walloped them that day. For you as a player, is it different when you're not playing an SEC team? Is it different? And maybe it's more so today because we're in the playoff era. Maybe that matters more than it used to. But you played in a lot of big games at Georgia. Is there something different about a big non-conference game, an opponent that you don't see every Saturday?
It's really not, Brandon. The only thing I could say is that, you just may not be quite as familiar with them because you don't play them, year in and year out. But once you get out there on the field, it's 11 guys on their side, and, it's all about just executing and having the right scheme and the right plan. So overall, it's not that big of a difference. It's just being familiar with the players on the other team is probably the biggest curveball.
I read something this week where I guess Roquan Smith had said that he watched more film to get ready for Notre Dame in 2017 than he did for any other opponent that he played. That was at least hearsay coming from Smith on that. It sounds like maybe the same way if it's an opponent you're not used to seeing. And, of course, when you played Clemson in 2002, you were a sophomore, so you hadn't seen a lot of anybody at that point in time yet. But, is there, I guess, more film that has to be watched in a situation like that because it's not the familiarity you might have with, say, an Auburn or a Tennessee or Florida, one of those teams that by the time you're a senior, assuming it's the same coaching staff, you've kind of battled them 4 times. From that standpoint, maybe a little different.
Well, it shouldn't be as challenging now because they've got a couple of games under the belt. The tough part, Brandon, is when you open up the season with a new opponent like that because you really don't know what they're going to do. And so, like when you mentioned Clemson when we played them, that was always the first game of the year, and you got new players at the new team, and you don't know exactly. And a lot of times, new coordinators, and so you don't really know exactly what you're about to see. We're fortunate. We're going in the fourth game of the season. So they can watch the first three games and at least have a pretty good idea. The matchups and who are the key playmakers, the whole deal. But coming in there, that first game is the one that's really the biggest challenge.
What do you think about the game itself on Saturday? One of our themes on this show this week has been, admittedly, we do think Georgia wins this game, and we have to be honest, we think Georgia wins it convincingly. And yet it's kind of weird to see everyone kind of think the same thing. I mean, I watch as much college football content as anybody, listen to podcasts, try to consume as much national stuff as I can, and I really haven't heard anyone yet make a convincing case for Notre Dame. David, it's even been so much so that we've had a lot of, Notre Dame people, even had a guest on the show this week. Even they don't seem to be making much of a case for Notre Dame. And there's a part of me, speaking as a fan here for a moment, that doesn't kind of like when everyone seems to think the same thing, because when is everybody ever right about anything? I mean, what do you think about the game in and of itself?
Well, I'll say this. I hadn't watched a ton of Notre Dame play, but I've watched the Dogs every week. If we come out and execute like we're capable of doing, there's no doubt in my mind we'll win, and we'll win convincingly. But, that's also the reason why college football is so fun, because you really never know what's going to happen week in and week out. In fact, you don't know what's going to happen from quarter to quarter or half to half. I mean, you can go back and rewind and look at the Georgia-Alabama game last year in the SEC championship. I mean, that was a tale of two totally different halves. And so if Georgia comes out and executes, I mean, you just look at offensively. I mean, our offensive line, we've got the upper hand there. We've got the upper hand with our backs. Versus their linebackers, our receivers should be better than their DBs. And I love our quarterbacks. So, I mean, if we come out and just execute, we should be fine. But you never know exactly the way it's going to go. And I'm always leery. People say, hey, what do you think the score is going to be? The only thing that, one of the reasons I always got anxious for you never know. Every game kind of takes a life of its own and creates a different feel. And I think even as a fan, you kind of get that, you're going, man, this is just a weird football game. And sometimes that happens. So you just never really know exactly how this thing's going to shake out.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You talk about this version of Georgia and how they respond in moments like this. I actually thought that Georgia probably didn't get enough credit for what it did last Saturday. People think of Arkansas State as an overmatched opponent, and to a degree, I guess they were. The score is 55-0, but this is a team that had been a bowl game 4 years in a row coming into this. Georgia had every opportunity to look ahead, didn't. You have the entire universe with good reason rooting for Blake Anderson, the Arkansas State coach, and yet Georgia didn't allow that to become a distraction, because when it's all said and done, there's still a football game to be played. I mean, I actually think the Arkansas State game provides a little more evidence than some people might think for what this current version of Georgia looks like, which is a team that's not easily distracted, even by the extra trappings of a Georgia-Notre Dame game. They just are very businesslike in their approach, and I do think that speaks well for what could happen against the Fighting Irish on Saturday.
Well, the key is this team seems extremely hungry right now. I mean, they seem like, they're all about business. And, the key is, can they maintain that throughout the year? And hopefully, if we just come out and just keep staying hungry, keep trying to get better regardless of the results and the win-loss column, this team's going to be just fine. And it'll take care of itself because the talent's there, the coaching's there, and the leadership is there. And I've heard Nick Saban talk about a little bit with his team, and he's had a couple of teams here in the last 3-4 years that started off extremely hot, but kind of lost their edge down the stretch because that hunger and that humility kind of lagged down the stretch. And we just I love where we're at right now because this team is strictly about business and getting better. We just got to make sure we maintain that. And I think, some of our key leadership within the team, even Jake Fromm now in his third year and some of those other guys, they're going to make sure that, especially some of these younger players that are getting time, will not get the big head and just keep grinding away.
I want to talk to you about a big weekend coming up at Tailgate Apparel in a moment, downtown Athens. Before we get to that, you mentioned Jake Fromm. Let me also ask you about him as well, because there's going to be a lot said this week, and with good reason. It's understandable. the contrast between Fromm now, as he plays a big game as a junior, and his first career start at Notre Dame in 2017. David, I was in South Bend there that day, and obviously we saw Fromm do some things really well, but we also saw, like anybody would be, kind of a nervous quarterback. And that's a huge spot in BC, primetime television. That's a huge spot to make your first start. It's almost like the storybook thing of first game is at Notre Dame. It's just kind of a crazy thing to think about. And Fromm passed that test with flying colors and got better from there. But you probably understand what he's been through more certainly than anybody we'll talk to in our show this week about that. So from your unique vantage point of having played this position, done this job before, been a Georgia quarterback, what have you seen from Fromm from September of 2017 to September of 2019 in terms of his growth as a signal caller?
Well, I'll say this. He probably started off as really, really good, and now he's great. But, you think about it as a true freshman, taking us all the way to the national championship, putting us in a position, really, to win it there at the end. I'll probably say the biggest difference between going into this game 2 years ago and now is more the fact that the coaches had the training wheels on the calling sheet then because he was a true freshman, and they just didn't want him to lose the game, versus him now being freed up to make all the checks. And so he's been freed up, and he's gained the confidence of his coaches that, obviously, with his track record, the way he's handled himself the last couple of years, he can handle the offense and he can handle the load. When he made his first start on the road a couple of years back, it was pretty much a football 101 type, play calling sheet, and so. And Jake handled it well. I mean, it wasn't an easy game by any means passing, but it's tough as a quarterback as well when you know that the coach is being really conservative and just trying to make sure you don't make any mistakes.
David, it's a big weekend in Athens, and so many people have been saying to me, hey, I'm coming into the Athens either for the first time ever for a game or for the first time in a long time, and they're saying, what is there to do? It's kind of for people who get there early, and you should on Saturday, you got a lot of hours to fill, and my advice and all that is always, hey, make sure you stop by and see what's happening over at Tailgate Apparel. I love shopping for the UGA gear there inside, but it's also a fun spot to hang out on game days as well. The address is 279 East Broad Street. It's the old Harry Bissett's building. 279 East Broad Street's the address. And, David, I know that Tailgate's getting ready to host a bunch of UGA fans again on Saturday, and I'm sure they've got big stuff planned and big stuff in store.
There's no doubt. I mean, they're expecting a huge weekend. I mean, with it being an 8 o'clock kick, there's probably going to be fans lining the streets in downtown, starting early Saturday morning. So we got a big turnout. So from 1 to 3, I'm actually going to be in the store. And so love to see the fans. Y'all come by. I'll have my family there as well. So look forward to seeing the fans. And then from 3 to 4:30, really excited about this. Going to have Frank Ross, captain of the 1980 championship team that beat Notre Dame. So I'm also Brandon, hoping that's going to bring some really good karma to the football team since we got our 1980 captain there signing. And then last, we're going to follow up from 4 to 6. We're going to have Reggie Brown, ball receiver in there. So we're literally going to have somebody, we're going to have a former player signing really from 1 all the way to 6 o'clock on Saturday. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Tailgate's fired up and excited about the weekend as well. So it's come by and see me. Love to see if you're going to be there in Athens. And come by, I'd love to see you.
So quick recap here. David Greene starting at 1 p.m. You got Frank Ross, great stories from the 1980 team. He's going to be there starting at 3 p.m. And then later on that evening, Reggie Brown, great former UGA receiver. So 3 big autograph opportunities at Tailgate Apparel on Saturday, 279 East Broad Street in Athens. And by the way, check out our link on our Facebook comment section right now. You can see some of the apparel there from Tailgate Apparel, too. Really good stuff. David, thanks so much for being with us here on DawgNation Daily. Hope I bump into you at some point in Athens this weekend. Enjoy the time with your family, and we'll look forward to hopefully getting a chance to talk to you again soon as well.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Good stuff there from David Greene, former Georgia quarterback, and stop on by and see him and some other former UGA greats at Tailgate Apparel on Saturday. We've got Brad Nessler from CBS Sports coming up in a moment. Let me also take a moment to take care of some pretty serious business here. Let's do our Ortho Atlanta injury report. And unfortunately for Georgia on Saturday, and you can check out more on this, Mike Griffith's got a good piece up at DawgNation.com. Unfortunately, there are probably more names on this list for Saturday than you'd like. Obviously, Tyler Simmons has been battling something, although he may be in okay shape when you get ready for Saturday. D-Rob had the hamstring issue or whatever it was that kept him out. Apparently, concerns about that are dissipating somewhat. I've said before, at some point in time on Saturday, I want to see D-Rob, Blaylock, and Pickens on the field together as 3 receivers for Georgia. Hopefully the injury situation for Robertson doesn't prevent that from happening. Of course, the big one's also Tyson Campbell. We talked about Campbell yesterday. I think that Georgia's got the depth in the secondary to withstand a Campbell injury, but obviously you don't want to play without him. So that's one worth watching, especially when you know that one of the strengths for Notre Dame is probably what they do at the wide receiver position, a couple big guys that can really run. Georgia's big guys who can run, matching up with them. I think that's an important part of this game, especially when you know what Ian Book's able to do, both with his legs and with his arm. If you can jam those receivers to the line, something that Georgia's been good at in the past, and eliminate the field of vision for Book because he doesn't see an open man, all of a sudden you take a running quarterback and make him single-dimensional. All of a sudden he's not just a running quarterback. He may be in some cases running for his life, and that, I think, is part of the recipe for how Georgia wins this game on Saturday. But these injuries and the resolution of those will be a part of the storyline here this week. And, of course, the injury report here on DawgNation Daily is brought to you by our friends at Ortho Atlanta. 14 locations in Metro Atlanta with orthopedic and sports medicine care for the whole family, including seniors and kids. They've got 39 physicians, 450 employees dedicated to patient care throughout the Metro Atlanta. They also offer in-house physical therapy, MRI imaging, outpatient surgery, and after-hours orthopedic care. It's been said before that a good orthopedist can get you back in the game, but a great one can get you back your life. The quality of life is so important here. That's why DawgNation Daily recommends Ortho Atlanta. Let me give you the website to go to find out a little bit more about this. You can find Ortho Atlanta online, and you can take good care, and they're going to take really good care of you. So make sure you check out Ortho Atlanta here today. So website is orthoatlanta.com. Orthoatlanta.com. You can find out more about Ortho Atlanta. All right, Brad Nessler coming up. Let's take a trip around the SEC first.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
All right, good stuff there from David Greene. Good to have him a part of the program. Let me bounce through a couple of SEC stories here just for a moment. I saw where Nick Saban had an update on Antonio Alfano, the 5-star defensive line signee who's essentially gone AWOL from the program. And Saban, in some words that were captured by reporters this week, essentially accused Alfano of quitting, which it sounds like he kind of did. Stopped going to class, stopped coming around the football building. However, we are in a day and age now where both sides, the coach and the player, are going to have a side of the story, and Alfano's going to be telling his side of the story. And so while Saban may present a public image on what happened to Antonio Alfano that makes it seem like the player was the one in the wrong, the recruiting world has a way of being a bit of a rumor mill, and, Alfano's going to have his own side to tell on this too. We are in a weird age now where it used to be that if you're a defensive lineman, you come in, you expect to wait for a couple of years. That position, maybe as much as anything else, for your time to be on the field. Well, there's impatience reigning supreme now in this new transfer age, the new kind of extended redshirt age where you can save some of your eligibility. Guys expect to play right away, even at positions where it used to be impossible to do that. Now, Georgia's had some success with the freshman defensive lineman this year. I think Trayvon Walker is pretty much a part of the mix here with the Dogs as of right now. However, a couple places, we talked about Moore yesterday at Auburn, Charles Moore, Antonio Alfano here, highly recruited defensive linemen who weren't playing enough right away and just kind of got tired of waiting. At least that's what it seems to be on the outside. How these coaches manage that's going to be kind of interesting. Also interesting to hear Saban going as public as he did with his seeming dissatisfaction and how Alfano had behaved. These things have a way of coming back on you a little bit. I don't know that Saban should have been quite as outspoken as he was. I am very curious about a storyline for Saturday. Do you think that Bo Nix, who did admittedly make a big throw for Auburn against Oregon in Week 1, is he ready to go on the road in a hostile environment at Texas A&M? And by the way, is Texas A&M ready to be a hostile environment for the Aggies? We talked about Georgia's opportunity this week to make it really, really tough on Notre Dame. That's probably even more so for Texas A&M. Go back and look at the Kevin Sumlin era. Aggies have not always played well at home. Always a full stadium, usually a really loud crowd. They take pride in that. But in terms of Texas A&M winning games, have not done that as much as you might think. So this is a big day for Texas A&M. I do think Texas A&M wins the game. But Bo Nix could change the calculus on that a little bit. This is a guy that's a big fan favorite with Auburn fans. Does he go out there? Does he get that good performance and give Auburn a chance in this football game, especially given the fact that on the other side, Kellen Mond has not played great yet for Texas A&M. His reputation coming into the season probably better than he's performed up to this point in time. That may be worth paying attention to just a little bit. This is the perfect tailgate game. It'll be on that 3:30 window. You can watch this before you go inside Sanford Stadium on Saturday, before you tune over your TV to CBS if you're home. This is a fun one to take in as an appetizer before the main course, which is Georgia and Notre Dame. By the way, I'm also interested in South Carolina, Missouri as well. When it comes to freshman quarterbacks, I probably have more confidence in Helinski going on the road to Columbia, Missouri right now than I do Nix for Texas A&M. You can do with that what you will. But for Will Muschamp, who's already lost to North Carolina, on the road at a Missouri team that has already got a non-conference loss to Wyoming, both these coaches, both these programs, you could say, need this game. I don't know that Will Muschamp doesn't need it more. South Carolina fans getting a little restless, getting a little impatient. I'm sure they'd like to see him come up and perform in a big spot. Ultimately, can South Carolina win this game on the road? That may be asking a little too much, but keeping it closer than the so-called experts think, I think that's certainly a possibility. It's potentially a harbinger of what could be for the rest of the season for South Carolina. Well, the overall record at the end of the year might not look great, but South Carolina can still make itself a little bit of a tough out. I said this on Monday, that the SEC East teams that have changed quarterbacks, for the most part, haven't seen much of a drop-off with the change. I think this is definitely true at South Carolina, where I think I may like Helinski for that offense a little bit better than I like Jake Bentley, which is probably kind of a weird thing to say, but it certainly seems true right now. By the way, as we're doing our SEC, let me remind you, with the Callaway Resort and Gardens, their new Fall Adventure Pass. It's an activity pass program that allows you to maximize both the fun and the savings at Callaway Resort and Gardens. A great thing to do here during this fall time of year, especially with the weather being like it is now. Could not be a more perfect thing. The Adventure Pass includes bike rental, treetop adventure, tennis time, shore fishing. It's just $40 plus tax and fees, which is actually a really great savings. You can go to this website to find out more information about that, CallawayGardens.com. Website, once again, CallawayGardens.com, or you can purchase this at the Callaway Information Center or the Treetop Adventure Course, CallawayGardens.com, to find out about some really cool things happening at Callaway Resort and Gardens this fall. Make sure you check that out. And here on DawgNation Daily, of course, one of the things I know you're looking forward to checking out, what's going to happen Saturday night on CBS, the unbelievable backdrop for college football with Georgia hosting Notre Dame. For more on that, let's talk to the guy who'll call the game for CBS on Saturday night. It's great to have Brad Nessler back here again on DawgNation Daily. Brad, first of all, thank you so much for your time, and I'm guessing you're going to say that you're as excited about telecasting this game, broadcasting this game, as Dog fans are about watching it. This one has been anticipated for a long time, and it's finally here.
Yeah, Brandon, we've been looking forward to it when it was on our schedule. We looked at that and said probably a night game, and then people said, well, if you do that, then you can't do Alabama and LSU at night and the whole thing. And we said, I think Alabama and LSU do just fine at first weekend in November by itself at 3:30. But anyway, no, you and I have been around here a long time. I've been here almost 40 years, and I don't remember a game that people were this excited about that wasn't a bowl game or an SEC title game or a national championship game. For a non-conference home game, it's about as big as it gets, I think.
Yeah, I'm curious of your opinion on that because, as you said, you know the history of all this as well as anyone does. I feel like I know parts of the reasons why the game is as big as it is, not just in terms of TV audience, but the ticket prices are through the roof. And, there's expectations of maybe being, 70,000 people in Athens that don't have tickets for the game.
Yeah.
If you had to put into words why you think all of this is such a perfect storm and such a fever pitch, do you have a good sense of why it's as big as it is?
Well, I think, just the national brand that's Notre Dame. I mean, they've got alumni everywhere in different countries. I mean, just they've had 7 Heisman winners. They've had 11 national championships. They're Notre Dame. They used to have, when I was a kid, we'd get home from church on Sunday morning and we watched the replay of Notre Dame where they condensed it down to an hour and a half, and Lindsey Nelson would say, we pick up action later in the third quarter. I mean, that's Notre Dame. And just looking at the gold helmets, I mean, it's a national draw. It's a national brand. It's something that people in the SEC don't get to see unless it's a bowl game or a playoff game. To play a game of this magnitude in the regular season, and I think I think it's going to open up some eyes around the country in the Midwest and the Northeast about what Georgia football is about and what a scene it is. There's so many people. I grew up in the Midwest, and the Big Ten is the Big Ten, and it's Michigan and Ohio State, and that's the way it was. Before Penn State came into the Big Ten, before Wisconsin got good, and so on and so forth. And they just don't get what the SEC and what the scene it is down here. I've got a nephew coming down, and he's going to come with me to Alabama and Alabama and LSU, and he can't wait because you see it on TV and it doesn't do it justice, I guess. But I just think it's a great scene, great setting at night in Athens, biggest crowd ever. You can't beat it.
Let me do two things here very simply. I want to ask you a question about Notre Dame in a moment. Let me ask you a question about Georgia right now. Obviously, you know the storyline with the Dogs. They have been tucked just behind, just underneath Alabama and Clemson now for a couple of years. Now, the playoff is where ultimately Georgia needs to prove its point against one of those two teams one way or another. Right. But in terms of a perception heading into that playoff debate, how much would a performance against Notre Dame springboard that conversation? And as you said before, it's a chance to showcase the growing Georgia national brand on CBS on Saturday. How much do you think Georgia can change the perception of where it ranks below Alabama and Clemson by how it plays against Notre Dame on Saturday?
Well, I think it's great. I think it kind of started 2 years ago when they won up at Notre Dame. I think that became kind of a springboard for Georgia, that they were in the national consciousness of being a really good team and a top 4 team. Now, here doing this 1 month into the season, it's going to be, if Georgia wins the game and if they win it handily, I think it's going to open eyes. Do I think it'll move them past Alabama or Clemson? No, unless one of those two stumbles, but it'll certainly solidify their spot, and they'll be there the rest of the year, and they'll be favored the rest of the year in every game, pretty much. So until the SEC championship. But it's just one of those non-conference games that the committee's going to look at the end and go, if they beat them, if they beat Notre Dame, unless Notre Dame loses and then stumbles, 2 or 3 more times along the way, then it won't have the same impact. But I think the people that look at the Final Four at the end of the year would look at this as a pretty big moment for Georgia.
And then on the other side of this for a moment, I'm sure you're aware of this. It's hard to find national media members this week, Brad, who are picking Notre Dame in this game or even making a very strong case for Notre Dame. And that's what we do for a living around here. We kind of chronicle the opinions that are out there. And, boy, it's a one-way street right now, which makes some Georgia fans nervous. What do you think people are maybe not giving Notre Dame enough credit for going into Saturday? And what do you think makes the Fighting Irish maybe more dangerous than some Dog fans and some media members have maybe paid attention to thus far?
I think their receiving core is pretty good. Their tight end core is good, led by a kid from here, Tommy Tremble, and Cole Kmet coming back. I think they're going to run a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets that would make me nervous if I was the Georgia defense. Just if you look at almost every level of Notre Dame, you look at Ian Book and you go, Ian Book's good. Is he as good as Jake Fromm? Not quite, but he's good. You look at their wide receivers and you go, Chase Claypool's pretty good and Lawrence Keys is pretty good. Are they as good as the young guys that Georgia has? Probably not quite. You look at their running back core and you go, no, they don't hold a candle to Georgia. And then, their offensive line is really good and their defense is solid, and they have a good secondary. So, I think they match up well with Georgia, and I'd be nervous too. I guess I heard yesterday what the spread is. I don't ever pay attention to that, to be honest with you. But if I looked at that, I'd go, wow, that's pretty big spread, even though it's a home game against a team that's supposed to be number 7 in the country. I think Notre Dame's going to put up a good fight. I've heard people say that this is a no contest, and the people that say that, if they're right, that's great for Georgia. It's bad for our TV broadcast, but I just don't see it that way. I don't ever see any games that way, to be honest with you, unless it's Alabama playing Vanderbilt, and no offense to Vanderbilt, but done that a few times. Don't want to do too many more of those.
No, listen, I understand that. Well, Brad, you know the story. Georgia fans cannot wait for this. The CBS broadcast only adds to the excitement of that. A lot of folks ready to tune in at 8 p.m. and see this one on Saturday night. First of all, thanks to you and the whole team there, Gary and everybody else, for doing such a great broadcast. We can't wait to watch it. You'll obviously do a great job on the call, and look forward to seeing you in Athens this weekend, and look forward to having you back here on DawgNation Daily again very soon as well.
You got it, Brandon. We're looking forward to it. We'll do our best.
Good stuff there from Brad Nessler from CBS Sports. All right, let's wrap up our program here. First of all, huge thanks to Brad Nessler for being with us. And as I said before, I love that CBS theme song when it cranks up and gets going, and I won't hum it because I couldn't carry a tune with a bucket, but you know what I'm talking about. So for some of you, it's in front of your TV on that Saturday night. For others of you, it's that DVR the next day. We've kind of done our own version of the Sunday rewatch with recording these games, and so the CBS stuff on Saturday night is going to be a blast. And it's interesting to hear the perspective of someone who obviously wants to be a good game, wants to be a close game. He's got all 50 50 states. He's going to keep entertained on Saturday, and I think he makes a pretty compelling case for Notre Dame there in that regard. But a fun night coming up on Saturday night. Of course, we'll talk to you about it tonight. Marlowe's Tavern, Petrie Corners for our Marlowe's matchup with John Stinchcomb. I'll see you there for that. And then, let me also remind you, Gator Hater Updater, 1,055 days. We'll see you tomorrow here on DawgNation Daily. And on video, really good stuff. Appreciate you being with us as a part of our program here today. We got some time for some of your comments. I do have to hop off the air here at some point. Connor's not here today, so that means I got a couple extra things I got to do, so we'll get ready to do some of that. But I'll say thanks for being a part of our R.S. Andrews Cool Down, air, heating, plumbing, electric. R.S. Andrews does all of those things, and, as the kind of sort of less hot temperatures come in, you may start thinking about, it's going to be wintertime before you know it. Is your furnace ready to go for the winter? It's still a ways away before you have to think about that. We're going to have more hot weather, too, but be thinking about that furnace as you get closer to that cooler weather time of the year. When you need to kick it on, you want to make sure it's working, so rsandrews.com for more on that. And by the way, I'll see you on Friday on the DawgNation video channels for our R.S. Andrews Go with the Flow. Our buddy Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews will make our picks of the week. A little better week for me last week, although I'm still just 10-15 on the season. So trying to get some momentum and get hot here at some point in time. Maybe that'll happen. Your comments, and we'll talk about anything you want to talk about for the next couple of minutes. Of course, we appreciate you being with us as always. Let us see what is going on here. Over here on Facebook here for a moment. Somebody said, let me see if I can find this. Marcus Bass, good to have you with us. Thanks for your comments. Donathan, Henderson says, how many sacks and turnovers do I see, BA? I think the sacks are easier to predict than the turnovers. I think 4 is a pretty good number. Now, remember, when Book runs, what could be a sack may turn into a tackle for loss. So you have a weird statistical thing going on with that. But I think if you find a way to sack Book 4 times, I think you're in pretty good shape there on that. Joel Moody says, give the point Saturday, BA Dogs roll, 41-17. Love to hear it, Joel. Appreciate that. Jennifer Caldwell-Sperlin says, missed the last 10 minutes. Recap. We actually had a good interview with Brad Nessler, Jennifer. So if you get a chance to go back and check that out, I hope you will. Rob Johnson, the former USC quarterback, says, BA, you think there's a chance for black jerseys? I kind of don't. I just don't think Kirby Smart wants to roll that way. And I said this yesterday during our R.S. Andrews Cool Down. And I know that Brad Nessler, when he was on with us the last time, he kind of pushed, for the black jerseys. Obviously looks great on television. That makes a lot of sense. But I'm a hypocrite on this. My public stance is I don't want them to do it. If they did do it, I would admittedly think it's probably kind of cool once you got there for the game, and it would only make a madhouse even madder, even wilder. But I just don't think Kirby Smart wants to do that. I don't know when he wants to wear them, but I don't think he wants to. Barry Davis says, will Notre Dame be able to stop the run? That's obviously the $64,000 question, and the one thing you can't seem to really get around on this. Now, Kirby Smart will say you can't make too much of the rushing yards that Notre Dame allowed to Louisville because Louisville's got a running quarterback in Jawan Pass. That's difficult to stop. It's not the same kind of runs we're going to be calling. New Mexico last week also running the ball a little bit. That's a team that's designed to run the football. So, I mean, the most favorable explanation for Notre Dame is maybe they played 2 opponents where the running plays were just going to be inflated. That would be your favorable opinion. I don't think that happens, y'all. I've said this before. I think Georgia runs the ball on everybody, much less a team that's not great at stopping the run. So, do with that what you will. Do that what you will. Myra Herbert Bush says, how about black jerseys for homecoming? I'd have no problem with that. I like this from Kevin Cook, who says, Book's going to feel our book in. Now, obviously, Georgia's got a couple of those when it comes to some pass rushers, guys like Jermaine Johnson, Azeez Ojulari, Nolan Smith. By the way, I know some people saw Nolan's tweet from yesterday. I wouldn't make too much of stuff like that. I don't have any inside information on that, but Nolan's a guy that, going back to the recruiting process, a lot of y'all know this, Nolan enjoys Twitter. And so keep that in mind. Mike Mazzell says Kirby won't use the black jerseys all year. Maybe not. Spoonie Jr. says no end zone for Notre Dame. I'd love to see it, Spoonie. I'd love to see it. I'm greedy. Going into Saturday. Greedy. Willie Gray asks an interesting question. The Cash Daniel video of him twisting ankles. I have not seen that. This is the Kentucky defender. He's the one that's like a pro wrestling guy. When they beat Florida last year, he kind of clasped together the Gatorade stuff or Powerade, whatever it is they use. Kind of did it a la Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's kind of a little bit of a big personality. I know he's been accused of doing some ankle stuff. I guess Mullen talked about that this week, but I haven't actually seen the video. Back us down says 42-13. He says, hopefully we run off the edges instead of up the middle on Notre Dame and let our speed wear those guys out. I think they're going to try the inside first, back, because I understand what you're saying. I think they're going to try the inside first because, that's your first chance to go for a knockout blow, right? I think the problem for Notre Dame, though, is when you sell out to stop it between the tackles, because that takes bodies. I mean, against Georgia's guys, big 5 offensive linemen, it takes bodies. You got to put people in the middle of the field to have any chance there. All of a sudden, though, now the outside is wide open, and it's DeAndre Swift who seems to always get that. But it's James Coley who likes to push that James Cook button. And I don't know how you defend the up-the-middle run. I mean, take Swift out of the equation for a moment. What if you have Zamir White at tailback, and you've got moment where, like, say, James Cook's line up as a slot? Because Georgia's used multiple running backs on the field together a decent amount this year. I don't have the snap count on that, but I've seen it with my own eyes, and I think every game. What do you do? I mean, what do? You either put bodies to protect against the big offensive line with a powerful runner like Zamir White, but all of a sudden now you're wide open for jet sweeps. I don't like comparing to Gus Malzahn, but when the Auburn offense has been at its best, that's what it's been. It's been the horizontal threat to go along with the up-the-middle threat. And the one thing that has always plagued Auburn is they've never had enough of a vertical threat to go with that. Well, Georgia may have that too. Georgia may be pretty tough to defend on Saturday. Crump gives Nolan 3 sacks. Boy, that'd be something. That'd be something to see. Justin Price said, what happened with Nolan's Twitter? Nothing. It was just it was one of those, like, you see this from like young people a lot. It's a lot of, I think he said, listen, I'm not perfect. Everybody makes mistakes or something along those lines. It was, I personally believe it was an intentionally cryptic tweet, meant to seem like it meant something while it actually meant nothing. That's a fairly common youthful tactic when it comes to social media, it seems like. Chandler Johnson. This is a good pick. I like this prediction because we know they've practiced it, but we haven't seen it in a game yet. Although, Chandler, you may have just let the cat out of the bag. How about Wild Dog with James Cook on Saturday? We haven't seen that yet this season, correct? But we know they practiced it. Media members have seen that. I don't believe I was there when they did that, but I know that Connor and Mike and some of those guys have seen that. I know that for sure. Slim Goody on YouTube says, how about 10 sacks for the Georgia defense? It'll be quite a Monday on DawgNation Daily if that's the case. Quite a Monday if that's the case. Nicholas King says the Auburn defense is going to eat Mond alive. That's a pretty good prediction, Nicholas. I think, though, that you got a situation here where you got, YouTube comments coming in fast and furious. I think you've got a situation where you've got 2 programs going in different directions. I believe the A&M program's on the way up. I know a lot of y'all don't like Jimbo Fisher, but I do believe that's true. I believe the Auburn program, however slow or fast, is on its way down. And I think these 2 programs meet in the middle on Saturday, and that's why I favor A&M in the game. P. Brown Live Fit says 6 sacks. That'd be huge. Dat Boy Debo, or DBO, hope I pronounced that correctly, says, who's the guest picker on Saturday? I don't have a good feeling about this one way or another. I know that a lot of message board stuff this week have mentioned the actor that played Rudy. Is it Sean Austin or Aston, however you say his name? I've argued against Rick Flair, even though I love Flair. I just think that Flair has spread himself too thin. He's made appearances on behalf of like every sports team by now, even though he's got the authentic connection to Georgia. I can't endorse him as guest picker on Saturday, although it'd certainly be entertaining. Bubby Dean says, we give up 17 points to Murray State in week 2. Toledo hosted the Racers last week, shut them out 45-0. No way the Dogs can stop the Irish. Book launches Heisman campaign on Saturday. That's coming from somebody else, I guess, because I know that That doesn't sound like the Bubby Dean that I know, but interesting to hear him say that nonetheless. Gamer Boy Live 1 says it's true that the Notre Dame offensive line hasn't lived up to how much praise they've seemed to get so far. Yeah, kind of funny how that works out with Notre Dame, isn't it? Kind of funny how that works out. Bionic says all the UGA teams wear the black uniform except the football team, and don't say it's bad luck. So, Bionic, I don't believe it's bad luck. If Georgia wore them on Saturday, I don't think it would have any negative repercussions on the field whatsoever. I think, unfortunately, and you can say this is unfair, but I believe this is the truth. Because Georgia got beat as badly as it did in 2008, because Alabama mocked them for it, I think that now that choice isn't available to Georgia the same way it is other programs. Like Notre Dame will occasionally wear green. The fans like it. The players love it, but it's not that big of a deal one way or another because you don't have the same kind of history for Georgia you have there. You know, the fact that the 2007 blackout against Auburn was such a, what appeared to be like a raging success, the flop the following year, I just think that there's a little too much backstory there. Now, that may be dumb. You may be right. But I believe that's what's kind of going on there. Tram Dog says, BA, don't read the trolls. Bubby Dean's not a troll, though, unless he got hacked. I don't know where that came from Bubby. Jarvis Anna says, do you think we can see a Nolan Smith Goldberg Spear Ian Book on Saturday for sack? Boy, you talk about that noise echoing up Sanford Stadium. If that happens, that'd be good to see. P. Brown Liftfit says, BA, you better bring an extra black shirt. This game's going to be a blackout. I mean, there's a chance I might wear black anyway. I know I said earlier I was going to wear red, but I may wear black because if it's not going to be 100 degrees, I actually probably prefer black. So there you go. I may do that. Dwayne G says, what does our defense rank versus Alabama at this point in the season? It's a good question. Probably deeper in some respects. Alabama's been plagued by injuries. You know, the one big comparison that you can make in favor of Georgia looking at Alabama is the running game. Alabama, as of yet, has just not run the football and may not be that committed to running it this year. New offensive coordinator, you know, Steve Sarkisian there in place there. It could be a storyline worth watching, y'all. Byron Dean Butler says, Georgia Peach, before I get to Byron, Georgia Peach says black is slimming, BA. Don't think I don't know that. Don't think I don't know that. Black helps me in two regards, and I won't even pretend this isn't true. Black is a little bit slimming, which I like. Black also makes my hair look blacker, which I also need, as opposed to a little less gray. You know, because I actually like the color gray, but when I wear gray now, it makes my hair look gray. I look like a corpse. So black helps in that regard too. So I don't mind telling you about that whatsoever. Brian Skelton says, my bet for guest picker is Herschel. So it's kind of funny, Brian. Herschel, and I don't mean to name drop, but Herschel told me in July that he was coming for this game. Now, he was also here for the Dooley Field commencement back in early September. So I don't know if he just changed his mind, decided to come for that instead of coming for this. But he did say he was coming to this game. So him being a part of this in some form or fashion, I guess it's a possibility because, I mean, unless I'm just forgetting or misremembering, I believe he said he was coming. Now, I think he's been guest picker before, and they may want somebody to be different as a guest picker this time. But I believe he said he was coming. So we shall see. We shall see. And there's also a chance I'm just wrong about all that. But I'm pretty sure he said he was. He may have changed his mind. Scott Harris says the crowd needs to be a factor regardless of the shirt color. Scott, I think that's really well said. I said this off the top of the show. I think this is a day for Georgia fans to add to their reputation. If you look at all the ways in which we rank fans, TV rating, Georgia is through the roof with its TV ratings as of late. Notre Dame ratings, by the way, coming down. New Mexico last week, this is documented. You can go find this online. Not great ratings for the game against the Lobos. Georgia, though, go look at the week 1 ratings versus Vanderbilt. Same spot a year ago, the Georgia ratings are higher. Georgia's become a pretty good TV product here recently. Apparel sales, I know this is dumb, but this is a way you rank fans. Georgia buys as much gear as anybody does. It's the reason why we talk about so many apparel companies. There's a bunch of UGA gear getting sold. It's just a big business to be in. Pretty much travel. There were I've seen more cities covered in red and black. Nashville, Chicago, L.A., probably see a couple more before we're done this year. Georgia just blankets these cities. They take over these road trips. The next way for Georgia fans, the next big thing for Georgia fans to do is to say nobody creates a more intense home field advantage than we do. In this case, the we is applicable because it's talking about the fans. We create the best advantage of anybody in the country. That, by reputation, hasn't always been the case. Now, there have been some moments in Sanford Stadium that are as loud as anywhere you want to go. And generally speaking, in the last couple of years, the stadium has been pretty intense for big games. Mississippi State in 2017. That was a house of horrors for Mullen. A disaster for him from the moment he stepped on the turf. So there's been plenty of moments in which Georgia's been just fine. But in terms of over the course of the last 10 to 15 years, the moments like 2004 LSU, which was incredible, 2013 LSU, incredible. Those moments, 2007 Auburn, obviously, those moments maybe not as consistent as you'd like for them to be. This is a time on Saturday for Georgia fans to say, as fans, we're essentially 5-2 players. We travel, we buy gear, we watch games on TV. We also create the toughest of tough atmosphere because as much as it pains me to say, having been at a place like, say, Auburn in 2017, crowd was a factor. Georgia can be a factor on Saturday, and I can't wait to see that part of the show for myself. On Facebook. What else is going on over here on Facebook? Joel Moody says the 4 highest priced college football tickets are Georgia games. DawgNation is real. Yeah, from that standpoint, Joel, there's no doubt about that. Dan, I hope I pronounced this correctly. Is it Rollader? Rollader, did I pronounce that correctly? That's a good question. He said, how much of Zamir White is showcased here this week? I've been kind of curious about that because obviously you wouldn't say that Zamir's been a disappointment through 3 games, but he is not as top of mind for this Georgia offense as I would have thought he would be 25% of the way into the regular season. As I said before, Saturday's the kind of game where you can use him, and using means anybody, but this may be a brutal game to use him in for the opposition's sake because big offensive line, powerful runner, also having to be careful on the speed on the outside. White becomes just a miserable issue for Notre Dame to deal with at that point in time. So you could certainly bring that to the table. I mean, it's almost like, somebody mentioned earlier, how about James Cook in the wild dog formation? What if it's Cook at wild dog, White standing next to him? Maybe you put Zamir at the slot. I mean, that becomes quite a funny little formation at that point in time. John Snook says, someone please ask my question on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. Now, John, first of all, that's not fair. I've been on YouTube as much as anything today. What was your question, though, John? Because I don't see it. We've had a lot of YouTube comments today. Jethro Smith says 3 places I wouldn't want to be a visitor at night games: UGA, LSU, Clemson. Yeah, I think that Clemson's is an example of a stadium that's become really hostile lately. And I think that Clemson, I don't mean to open up a can of worms here when it comes to music. I do think that Clemson has used music really well to create a really cool atmosphere. Obviously, the fact they're winning helps that. That's not as big a stadium as some of these that we talk about, but they have made a loud environment. They probably deserve credit for that. LSU last year, I talked to some LSU fans while we were there in Baton Rouge, and they said that the last couple of years, they hadn't exactly been, as intense as they used to be, around Death Valley. They may have been hurt by some of this attendance stuff in college football. LSU may have been hurt by that a little bit. It was a pretty intense game, as the crowd sort of wore on during the game against Georgia. But the beginning of the game against LSU, not a night game where LSU fans usually do the best work. You heard a lot of Georgia fans there early on in that game. There were probably 20,000 Georgia fans in Baton Rouge last year. Georgia Peach on Georgia's 5th-string running back, Kenny McIntosh. That's probably true. Byron Dean Butler wants to see Stetson Bennett play on Saturday. I don't hate that idea. That's the kind of sort of greedy mentality you're going to hear from some Georgia fans this week. Scott Harris says, please be respectful of Notre Dame fans as they were to us, please. Yeah, I mean, obviously I talk, about creating an intense atmosphere, but creating an intense atmosphere doesn't mean being rude to anybody else. I mean, I'm in favor of, y'all watch how I'm on the show. I don't argue with any of y'all. Don't do anything like that. I mean, I'm in favor of just being kind to people in general. But you can be kind and also be intense. And so I hope the intensity of the atmosphere shines through, and at the same time, Georgia fans are certainly kind to the Notre Dame fans they come in contact with. Scotty Kirkpatrick says, "BA, they're getting 22 players in a plane to come to Athens to play football Saturday night." Yeah, I heard that from Kelly earlier this week. He's definitely trying to play up the underdog part of this. He definitely tried to do the whole thing of, he didn't say this out loud, but it was the insinuation of, I guess when you look at all this talent, I don't know, so what you say about Georgia, I reckon we'll get 22 guys on a plane. We'll go out and try to do the best we can. It was that kind of classic aw shucks routine from a coach. We played this on Monday's show or Tuesday's show. I apologize for not remembering. It was either Monday or Tuesday. We played that clip. Pretty funny. Not much depth, though, if he's only bringing 22 players. He's going to have a lot of guys playing both ways. Chad Daniel says that pretty much that same thing. Kelly Joy says, "Do you think UGA gets any silent commits this weekend?" Kelly, I think there may be a few silent commits already. One of which maybe not being here on Saturday. A couple of them maybe being on hand. I don't know that anyone's necessarily on guard for a 2020 commit. Could you get a 2021? I'm probably not quite as plugged into that. But I know some of the guys. I don't really know, if anybody's looking to bounce there on that though. But 2020, I don't know. I think that a lot of the guys who are there, Georgia could be in pretty good shape with. The one thing to maybe pay close attention to, and is, we'll talk to Jeff about this tomorrow, is a high-profile running back other than Kendall Milton on campus for this game. That could be telling. It's not going to be Zachary Evans, but is it somebody else? Jeff hinted at that yesterday. Santiago Diarn says, "If Kirby lets the Ferrari out, how many carries and rushing yards will Zeus have?" It's a good question. I think that Georgia will probably do a lot of what it has been doing, which is send these guys out there and wave. A lot of Swift, a lot of White, a lot of Cook, a lot of Harrion. I think right now Georgia's doing a pretty good job of rotating these guys in and out. And unless they just give a whole bunch to DeAndre Swift because it's a bigger game, I think that formula is actually working better for Georgia than I assumed that it would. Matt Rukavina also has a pretty good idea. With Georgia fans traveling as well as they have, can Georgia go play one of these games in Ireland at some point in time? Now, the Ireland thing makes sense for Notre Dame because of, obviously, their Irish Catholic heritage. What would be the more, appropriate game for Georgia? Is it Wembley Stadium in London because Georgia was once a English colony? Is that the most appropriate place for Georgia to play its game? Michael Carvel says yes. That's a pretty good idea, Matt. Now, you're a world traveler, of course, so I understand that you would certainly want to be doing that. For sure. Randy Hall says he thinks that Keely Ringo's a silent commit. It could very well be. I think Georgia fans justifiably feel confident that he's coming. All right, I would love to stay here and take comments all day long, but I apologize. I got to go. We have a very special DawgNation Daily coming up tomorrow. I can't say this for sure yet. Pretty sure we're going to have a fun special guest in addition to Jeff Sintel, so I'm excited about that. I will see y'all tonight, 6 p.m., Marlowe's and Petrie Corners for our Marlowe's matchup with John Stinchcomb. That's going to be a great time, 5210 Town Center Boulevard. Also, make sure you check out AJC.com to get your Atlanta news now. Told you this yesterday. We have 2 Senate elections coming up in 2020 for Georgia, which is going to be, given the fact that it's also a presidential year, it's going to be a wild ballot, a lot of political stuff happening. And no matter which side of the aisle you may find yourself on, keeping up with this news is important. AJC.com, checking in throughout the day at Atlanta News Now gives you a chance to do that. Also stuff on the Falcons and Braves, all the other sports stuff happening around town. Check out AJC.com for Atlanta News Now. And a huge thanks to R.S. Andrews for making the R.S. Andrews cool down possible. Get that $99 Smiley tune-up from R.S. Andrews, and they'll get your air conditioning unit back to factory fresh specs. Got to reach out to them today, though, at rsandrews.com. Y'all have a great day. I'll see you tonight, Marlowe's and Petrie Corners. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. for DawgNation Daily Live, presented by Kroger. Y'all have a great day. I look forward to seeing you then.